Super, this is wonderful. Thank you very much, Megan. I feel very humbled to be here for a number of reasons. Actually, St. Clair's is also where I was born, and congratulations very much. My life started in St. Clair's Hospital in Denville. The lives of my children started in Morristown Memorial. I graduated Kinnelon High School. I took some of my favorite classes, history of rock and roll, actually, at County College of Morris. So it's just really fabulous that I'm able to be here and talk with you. So I got a call a number of months ago from my dear friend Kevin at the chamber. And we had been in touch, and Kevin had, thank you, Kevin. Kevin had, he'd always been just a good friend and supporter of me. He worked in the credit union where I would bank, and we would always have, our sort of equivalent of water cooler conversations. We stayed in touch. And he'd been following a lot of the work that I'd been doing in artificial intelligence. And, for this event, he called me up when I was on the way back from Chipotle, of all places. He said, we'd really love for you to speak. And hopefully I'm not, regretting, or he doesn't regret that decision, because I'm very much, I try to just kind of wing these things and be able to just have sort of an engagement with the audience. Now, this audience is huge, so this is going to be fun. I need a couple things from you. I'm going to need your participation, and I'm going to need a little bit of a promise from you. So just listening to the other speeches just right before me, and a lot of the service staff are coming around with coffee and tea and so on. So let's talk about coffee. So coffee's my favorite drink. It's really simple. It's only two ingredients, right? There's only water and there's coffee beans. And then you have this entire multi-billion-dollar industry based on just two ingredients, right? And similarly, I think a lot of the things that you heard, the common thread for me is connection. That's ingredient number one. And service. That's ingredient number two. So this is some of the things I'm going to talk to you about, artificial intelligence, I promise. But I think it's going to be really beneficial if we can think about what is this opportunity for us to be able to see and be able to facilitate and actuate the connection, the power of connection, as well as how can I help serve this community, serve its education, all of these kinds of things. So I've got some slides, so we're going to go through an exercise. But first, I'm going to need your help with an exercise I call head, heart, and hands. Just in the interest of time, we're just going to do the hands part. That sounds funny, just saying hands. But let's do just a show of hands. Can everybody just raise their hand if they can draw? All right, how's my math? Oh, wow, okay, 60%, 70%. Fantastic. See, this is why the education system in Morris County is so good. Super. All right, can everybody just raise their hand if they can sing? A little bit less. 30%. 30%, all right, super. Now I'd like everybody just to close their eyes for a second. The children don't have to close their eyes, but if you're welcome to. I just want you to imagine a kindergarten class being asked that same question. How many hands are raised? All of them. So what happened to us? The children, you're good. But for us adults, it's about incentives, right? So we allow what we know to become an obstacle of what we can learn, right? And that starts, it's very structural actually. When we're in school, we want to study, we want to get a good grade on the exam and be able to bring that exam to our parents, and maybe they're going to put it on the fridge or something. So we're incentivized to demonstrate what we know, right, to get a good grade. We get to high school, we want to get to university, college, go to County College of Morris. You have to demonstrate, what do you know, right? What kind of courses did you take? All of these other kinds of things. Once you graduate your college, you're going into the workforce. You need to demonstrate what you know. You may not have a lot of experience, but you probably have some internships. You may have some, your course curriculum. You can demonstrate this is what you know, and then say, I'm a good candidate for this job. You are in the job, a couple years, let's say, and then you say, you know what, having demonstrably better skills and so on. Let me just demonstrate what I know, and then I qualify for this other job, a promotion, get more money, get more responsibilities, and so on. But the problem is then all of these incentives push us to say, let's demonstrate what we know, but forget about what we learn. And the presentation I'll give you, I hope will kind of reverse some of this, and maybe we'll act more like these good kids over here, and really just live in our imagination, be able to kind of actuate that for good. I'm just going to carry this thing. I liked walking around. Cool. All right, so I have a little bit of a model. One of the jobs that I have at S&P, I'm not allowed to provide advice, by the way, so if you just don't tell my employer, that'd be cool. But I think this is the way I kind of see the world in terms of the business world, right? And this could be anything. It could be a corporation, it could be a small practice, it could be a nonprofit, it could be an educational institution, any kind of organization. Every business has assets. These are things you control. These are my business assets, all of the stuff in my inventories, my people, right? My talent networks. All of these things are business assets. And then on the other hand, you have customers, right? If you're in a business like mine, then that could mean actually regulators. It could be different government authorities and so on. They're basically constituents. I have an agency to help them with their needs. And in between, you have your business model. Now, the way I think about this is if you treat the business model as a scientific hypothesis on how you can extrapolate business value from these assets into something that benefits your stakeholders, if you deal with it like a scientist, it's testable. And then you could start to be able to calibrate, okay, well, what am I doing with these assets to provide business value and so on. Here we go. So first question, we got to think about who am I? Does anyone... I just like doing this, I don't know why. Maybe I haven't grown up. Does anyone know who that is, by the way? Beanie Man. Yes. Who said Beanie Man? Right over here. All right, super. Literally, you were the first person to ever get this right in all of these talks. So that's fantastic. So he had a hit song quite some time ago called Who Am I, right? And if we think about these things into the context of a business, right? You have your personnel. What makes your organization a workplace of choice? We just talked about these talent networks, these young people that are graduating, and they're going to need appreciable skills, and they're going to need to be able to make these connections, see their talents as a way to mobilize something. How does an employer, on the other side, make it attractive to work for them? What are you providing that employer? That's part of the personnel. Technology. What kind of technology do you use? Right? What's the use of the technology? What's it unique to your organization? The data, what kind of unique data do you have? That becomes actually, a huge part of sort of the asset in terms of the ability for you to, grow that data into some capability and be able to extrapolate some value. What are some of the processes that you have? Like, what makes that unique? What's your brand? What's your reputation? What's the right to win to your of your organization to, either your clients, your customers, regulators, other, governments, the communities that you serve, right? So Charlie Brown's going to ask the question, this has nothing to do with AI. It does. It does. So if you take all these questions, I spent 10 minutes doing this, of the questions in red, and I said, how can I take those same things and expand them into AI, right? I think you could do the same thing very easily once you think about it. So for personnel, how can AI help my workforce, and what functions? What training's required? How do I enable psychological safety? AI is scary. And it kind of should be, right? It's very, very promising, but it also is very scary. So we have to think about, how do we get past that? The technology, what kind of technologies do we already employ? How are they related to AI? How are they sort of scalable? Things like that. What type of data are we using in decision making? It's almost like data becomes the fuel by which AI is able to enable all these different business processes and so on. With the right to win, how do customers perceive our company? In a lot of organizations, probably at these tables, a lot of it is this personal touch. What's that relationship? What is that sort of sense of community? How does that all sort of connect? If you have everything as an algorithm, does that alienate your customers? If you're not careful, yes. If you are careful, It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. So if you treat this business model as a hypothesis and ask these questions, you then need to sort of guard yourself by thinking about your biases. There's actually a really good website, it's called yourbias.is, which ends up going through these cognitive biases. Are you guys familiar with, let's start with the airplane, have you heard of that one? It's the survivorship bias. Okay, super. Yeah, so what happened in World War II, they did a study in World War II itself. They were basically analyzing the bullet holes that all the planes which got shot at, when they landed, they say, okay, let's look at all the bullet holes and plot them, right? So they said, let's reinforce the metal and where you have these bullet holes, and we're going to have less planes go down. It didn't really matter, right? And the reason is because they were evaluating the planes that came back. So if they did as much as reinforced the places where you didn't have bullet holes, that may be the key to saying this is why the planes went down, right? So it's a way of thinking about this in reverse and thinking about your biases. Anchoring is a kind of funny one. So these gentlemen, I don't know if you could read it, probably not. One guy is saying to the other, but we spent all this money on this anchor. We need to use this anchor. Anchoring, what happens is you make one decision, and every decision that you make afterwards cascade on that first one. So I'm going to the grocery store. So I'm going to hop in my car. Which car should I take, mine or my wife's car? Which one has more gas? You have all of these kinds of things. What I needed was transportation. I didn't necessarily need a car. Maybe I could walk there. I just sort of discounted that because I made that decision. So Socrates would say that this is my jam, because you're using the Socratic method to just ask all of these questions, right? And that's where the secret kind of unlocks with AI is it's not about the answers, it's actually about the questions. So, can you think about a customer? Socrates' word. Because all of our customers, all of our stakeholders, they have, they're people, right? People are complex. People have motivations. People have biases, all of these other kinds of things. So how am I able to see our connection? How am I able to serve this customer with those business assets over the short term, over the long term? What does that connection look like, right? So it's really about being intentional. So this is one of these things. I'm told this is useful. I just drew this by hand because I'm me. But if you think about with projects, a lot of times we're thinking about artificial intelligence. Okay, well, what can it do, and what kind of ROI, what kind of return on investment am I going to get from this project? If you take that bias thing into context, right? If you're going to focus on the return on investment, you're making a bunch of different assumptions that you know exactly how you're going to be able to mobilize this thing to something that has a return. So I know the customer type, I know the technology, I know the workforce training, I know the regulatory environment in which these things are going to go, right? So in reality, we don't know a lot of these things. If you do know all of those things, then your return on investment is going to be inherently small. If you go to the other side, and then you think about an aspirational goal, right? It's not about generating ROI. It's about building a capability that you could essentially apply leverage to generate lots and lots of ROI. But ironically, you generate all of that return on investment by not thinking about the return. You're thinking about what is the capability I need. In the middle, I'm not so clever at naming these things. I call it transitional. There, the question is not about generating the capability. It's not about generating return on investment. It's about asking the questions of what needs to be true in order for this capability to be mobilized to be able to get that return on investment. So something like, what is the regulatory environment that this thing's going to operate? Who is my customer type that would benefit from this? What is the operating cost of me integrating this technology? What does my workforce need to understand it? What do I need to do to educate my customers? Do I need customer training? That's another kind of thing that a lot of folks just don't think about, that your customers need to be trained on your output as well, and they need to buy in. That doesn't just happen. You have to, it's a Mitch Hedberg joke, a jump rope is just a rope. You've got to make the jump thing happen. So that's true of a lot of these things. So really, if you do these things, I think I was asked to do this at one point, but it's like a Venn diagram, right? So you think like a scientist, you'd be curious like a child. You act with intention. Once you do that, you start getting at these core values of being inquisitive, but being disciplined, actually kind of focusing that Socratic method on something that has business value for your organization and so on. And by allowing yourself the time and the right to focus, if you do those three things, then it becomes transformative, right? Bless you. Cool. So we have a research website. I have the QR codes there, yeah. It's pretty easy as the URL as well, just spglobal.ai. So this was my commitment. I thought that artificial intelligence is really kind of scary to a lot of people, and we owe it. S&P owes it. I owe it in terms of just my own knowledge. I've been about 25 years in the field. We need to be able to kind of educate ourselves. So this website's completely free, and it really takes three frames. There's fundamentals, which is about the technology. So artificial intelligence is kind of a portfolio of technologies. It's not just one technology. So that could be something like machine learning. Could be things like large language models, LLMs, if you've heard those in the news. With County College of Morris, they showed advanced manufacturing. So there's things called IoT, Internet of Things. There's a lot of processes, industrial processes, using Internet of Things in the manufacturing process. So that's one of these technologies. Now, all of these things, they have opportunities, they have business opportunities, but they also have risks. Those are born of the technology themselves. Now, if you integrate that technology into some kind of application, then it has an entirely different set of opportunities and risks. So for example, if you're to integrate artificial intelligence technology into a banking operation for loans, let's say, are you actually having automatic discrimination because the data that it's being trained on hasn't been debiased? What would you sort of do about that? That becomes, a risk. The opportunity is you're able to have economies of scale and perhaps have a much more sort of inclusive base of customers that you're able to reach because you don't have to do it one at a time. You have these opportunities of scale. But you think about just as a system, you need to sort of debias some of these things. And my hope is that all of this, and through reading this research, we also have a podcast. It's a video podcast where I invite folks, and an open invitation, by the way. I like folks from the practice to be able to kind of discuss what types of artificial intelligence technologies are impacting their business. What are the opportunities? What are the risks? Because my goal is this last one, is can we have a much more mature conversation about what these risks are, because we've actually laid them on the table. And I'm doing a lot of work with regulators and government officials on thinking through what does an actual a regulatory framework look like. And some of the suggestions I'm giving are a lot of the regulation we have right now is punitive, right? You need to do something bad, and if you do something bad, then you have to course correct. With artificial intelligence, this stuff is disastrous if you let the bad thing happen. So I think it's what are the preventative things that you can do? How do you use incentives? Again, partnership between corporations, educational institutions, nonprofits, governments, and so on, working together for the benefit of society while being able to enable progress. It's possible. It's not mutually exclusive. You need the right incentive structure. Sorry. Cool. Yeah, I think we might send these links along. If you wanted to hear some of these talks, so there's Mohammed Al-Aryan. He's actually a really nice guy. I was surprised. But he's an industry titan, if you know about the banking industry and so on. So we had a nice conversation about artificial intelligence in banking and what it really means to society and skilling and things like that. So this is available on YouTube. I think the chamber is going to be sending this around to participants. And I had... There we go. Had a really cool opportunity to hang out with Christine Lagarde a couple months ago, as well as Mario Draghi and so on. So this talk is also available on YouTube, and it's about systemic risk. How does artificial intelligence connect with systemic risk for the economy and so on? So that also would be available to you. Is that the only? Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, there we go. Legalese. All right, cool. I don't want to end on that. Let me just go to the next one. All right, that's better. All right, that's better than legalese. So that in mind, Megan, just call me on it. How much time do we have for questions? Do you know? 5, 10 minutes? Okay, cool. And Kevin is the mic runner. So let's talk. What kind of questions do you have? Do you want to just raise your hand and then Kevin can get to you?
Brittany. She's faster and closer.
Super, thank you.
What an informative presentation you've been giving. Thank you so much. My name is Lois. I want to know what advice you would give to parents who want to keep their kids safe when it comes to voice and appearance AI lookalikes.
Oh. Ooh. So I have two children. I have the same concerns, and they're very valid concerns, and this could get very scary very quickly. And one of the things I like to do with my son, who's of age to start experimenting with some of these, are do things together and be a little bit open to talk. You don't want to scare them, but at the same token, there's a right and a wrong way, right? And I think through asking the question, what is the purpose? What did you want? What is the outcome going to be? This is a conversation I have with my son, saying if you were to digitize yourself and have an avatar and then it's going to be in a game or something like that, what does that mean to you? And then have this conversation about opportunities and risks and say cool, you could play the game, you could play with your friends, but what if one of your classmates saw the virtual shirt you're wearing or something like that and was going to make fun of you? How'd you feel? And then it's one of these things, once you have this honest conversation, it starts to enlighten both the child to also sort of take level of responsibility and accountability for their own safety, while recognizing that partnership with you as a parent is the most important thing. So they're going to keep you in the loop on these decisions, make these decisions together. I don't think restricting works. There are some things that I think you probably shouldn't do, because things like a digital likeness and stuff like that, you can't take anything off the internet. So in terms of any kind of pictures and stuff like that, and I think reasonably most of the school, the websites and everything, they very, very heavily say you can't do this. Personally, I wouldn't recommend doing that either, because that essentially becomes part of the corpus that a bad actor can then use that to kind of weaponize and stuff like that. It gets really scary, and we could talk about it, but it's just, so I think it's one of those things, if you have like some of the cartoony things in terms of digital likeness, that might be fine, right? But it's just kind of but still have that conversation that said, look, this is your intention to put this out there, this is the intention for you to want to do this kind of thing, but the opposite, there's somebody else who might be using this information for something else. So what does it mean to you? Is this really important? Let's talk about it. If it's not important, let's talk about it anyway, but maybe not as much.
Also, family passwords.
Family passwords as well, yep.
And although the question was about children,
Yes.
they were also targeting grandparents because we're a soft touch.
Yep.
So for anyone that has grandparents, talk to them about family passwords.
Yep. So the recommendation was for both parents and grandparents, talk about family passwords, because there's often a vulnerability. And this is one of these things. I don't like it because it's very exploitative. Do you want to say it yourself?
After the question, I show up.
No, it's all good. There's an exploitation based on the vulnerability, and it's one of these things. I love my grandkids, so I wanna help them do this other kind of stuff. If they're not aware, the parents and grandparents and so on, that creates a risk. Other questions? Please.
Brittany has one over there. Thanks. You had mentioned, it was my turn. You had mentioned earlier in the other room about 5 years from now, how do we coexist with AI? That's what we're really focused on.
Yeah.
But how do we coexist? You had mentioned learning empathy, learning communication skills. How do we combat maybe and contrast that from your perspective? And maybe you've got some examples.
Yeah, sure. So the question from earlier, just for the benefit of everyone, was essentially, if you were to project us 5 years into the future, what are some of the, what looks different in terms of the workforce, especially with artificial intelligence in it? So the thing that I was thinking is that our workforce needs better skills at empathy, better emotional intelligence, better communications ability, better critical thinking skills, basically sort of a mental elasticity. They need to ask better questions, they need to make better decisions, and they need to talk with robots. So, are all these things true today, right? They're not. if we look at a lot of our training programs and so on, we have a lot of skills-based training. So if you're a machinist and you need to do this operation with a machine, then this is how to use it. So that's kind of a skills-based training. It's not really it's not training you to ask better questions to inform people and things like that. And I think this is this is a very rich question and a very rich sort of area. There's this thing you're probably hearing about called agent-based AI. Agent-based AI are basically these digital AI robots that can learn, they can make decisions, and they can execute by themselves, right? So if you need to buy toilet paper, and you don't really care what brand, you don't really care about the store, you care about quality and cost, it could go through all the decision tree, and it has your credit card information, it could just buy the toilet paper, it shows up at your house, you're good, right? So it's one of these things that as a worker, you need to kind of recognize that this agent is also working with you, and that you need to sort of either manage it or coexist with it and all of these other kinds of things, which requires a little bit of rethinking, so to speak. And I think it actually starts in our education system, where a lot of our young people, once they're going to school and things like that, it's important to focus on the content and the material and so on, but don't forget the context. Why? Why am I doing this? Why am I learning this kind of thing? And it's not just the application. Oh, I need to learn about chemistry because one day I'm going to work at Pfizer or something like that and be a chemist and develop drugs. Maybe you're not going to. You still need to learn about chemistry because you have to understand how these things work in a context, and frankly, it helps you think. Even the equation earlier, with 1 + 1, 1 + 1 = 2, and 1 + 1 = more than 2, right? That takes a certain degree of philosophy to really understand that, hey, synergy is a real thing, and I have an agency to help with that, right? So it's one of these things. We're not just learning just to learn the subject matter. We're not just robots reading the dictionary. We actually need to be able to apply context. The robots can actually do that, so we need to. The robots can help us with a lot of technical things. And maybe we can choose whether we want to use those or not, but I think that's putting ourselves in the ability where we have that choice to make is a luxurious position. And I think we owe it to ourselves to do it.
We only have time for one last question
Okay,
back
sure,
here.
please.
Okay, I'm going to make it really, really short. It's actually 2 parts, and it's a comment, it's not a question. The beginning stages of your presentation, you talked about the whole family interaction and without saying no to certain things, but make it a conversation with your family. And
Yeah.
that was impactful for me, as I learn a lot with my family in terms of technology and the avatars. That's all new. And then the second part of your conversation is about the team interaction. Is that how there's a lot of fear sometimes that AI will eliminate people? Then you're bringing it to the forefront and making us all very cognizant here in terms of our leadership that's here as well, is that you still need the human interaction.
Yeah.
And that the two do work and can coexist in such a way that we can be phenomenal together, but you need that emotional component and that human interaction. And I thank you for that. It was a great presentation.
No, thank you very much. Let me, just while you're on that thread mentally, let me just, I had a paper that my colleague Shu, right here in the blue sweater, helped me write, and she did all the hard stuff. I just wrote things. So there's 3 forms in terms of labor dynamics. There's basically labor replacement, which is essentially AI taking some jobs. Now the jobs, that's not true, by the way. Tasks can be taken by jobs. There's also labor augmentation, which means humans and AI are working together to be able to accomplish the jobs and the work and so on. And then there's this thing called regenerative AI, which enables new categories of work to exist that couldn't exist without AI and so on. So we had a paper that was presented at Davos a couple of weeks ago, I guess. Shu's brilliance was able to kind of make this real, where she was able to take the information for skills, or tasks, I'm sorry, link the tasks to what's the over-under on replaceability with AI. What is the composition of those tasks into jobs? What is those jobs into occupations, occupations into industries, and industries into the economy at large? and what is that sort of level of elasticity. And one of the areas that was actually the most disruptive were the hard scientists. And the reason for this is not that those jobs are going away by any means, but there are a lot of the ways that you're able to perform scientific operations changes markedly. And I can give you an example. I was very fortunate. IBM Research had invited me to their research lab, I saw 4 quantum computers. I was like a kid in a candy store. Like, these things are like, a lot of people don't know that they actually exist, and I saw 4. It's like seeing a unicorn. The gentleman that was sitting next to me, this blew my mind. He was taking this concept of a large language model, but the language he was using was the periodic table of elements. And he was using AI to synthesize every chemical formulation you could possibly come up with. What's the Cartesian product of every element, and how it could actually sort of exist to see, can we use these for novel health treatment, and pharmaceutical development, all of these other kinds of stuff. So that's a game changer, right? Like, now you could basically use everything of this earth. Kevin, I think he doesn't have the umbrella, but he's probably going to pull on my leg. So by all means, feel free to reach out to me or flag me, or read anything at spglobal.ai. And I really appreciate your time and your questions.